You are now listening to the Going North podcast, where you'll receive tips and techniques to advance yourself. I'm your host, Dom Brightmon, and every week we're going to be hearing from an author who's going to share their expertise to help you charge forward in life. Now let's get on with the show. And today on the Going North podcast, we have, you guessed it, another author, but not just any author. This author right here. Oh, man. If you've been waiting to see one of the spiritual visionaries of the 21st century, you got this guy right here. If you're looking for a thought leader to help you emerge into greater abundance, it's going to be this guy right here. A two-time best-selling author, a fellow podcast host, but he's world-renowned with over 290 reviews on iTunes.com because he's got some amazing content. This guy right here is going to help you shift, make a whole 180 into greater abundance. And you're probably wondering who this wonderful gentleman I'm talking about. I'm talking about the one, the only, Derek Rydall. How are you today, sir?
Oh, I am doing great and really appreciate that intro. I feel like I'm good. I can leave now.
Oh, man, that's a good sign. It's all downhill from here. So I'm pretty sure I missed a couple things. Mind filling in some cavities with your dentistry?
Yeah. I mean, so many people, I struggled for, at least a decade in self-improvement. And the only thing I improved after a decade of self-improvement was my ability to describe why my life was so messed up. So I had a lot of improvement in that area, but my life was getting more and more frustrating, and it got to the point where all this effort to improve my life actually caused me to feel more inadequate and eventually get addicted to drugs and alcohol, almost die of an overdose. And then thinking I just needed to work harder, work smarter, I dug in again, and then a couple months later, I almost drowned to death. And while I was in the moment before I drowned, I had a profound moment of surrender. And I had this breakthrough, and I saw that this guy I'd been trying to improve all these years was a fictional character, an amalgamation of peer pressure, parental fantasy, societal conditioning, and nothing I ever would do would ever make him enough. But right behind him, there was this other me that had never been hurt, so he didn't need to be fixed, and he was already complete, so he actually couldn't be improved upon. And it was a radical paradigm shift, and it was so radical, when I did finally get out of that near-death experience, I ended up pulling out of society and trying to become a monk. And the monk life wasn't right for me. In fact, a week into fasting and silence, I got so freaked out, I broke into the monk's kitchen in the middle of the night and stole food out of their refrigerator like some little feral creature out of the forest. And I decided I needed to cloister myself in my apartment and go on this inner journey. And the result of that was I saw that just as the oak tree is already in the acorn doesn't go out and achieve an oak or improve itself into an oak or even attract an oak. When the conditions are right, the oak that was always in it naturally emerges. And I saw that's true for every seed on the planet. And indeed, the whole universe is an emergent universe. There's already these perfect patterns and ideas, and they unfold as the conditions become right, including our own life. And it was a complete revelation. And as I began to practice what was being downloaded, I went from being broken, literally suicidal, living on 19-cent boxes of mac and cheese in a one-room apartment, to world travel, a big global business, transformational business, and just so many of the things that I wanted began to unfold much more organically. And I saw that a lot of my efforts to make stuff happen in my life, attract, achieve, whatever, was creating most of the resistance to it's the natural way we're meant to unfold. So that took my life to a whole new level. It caused me to, build a practice and a business around it, and that was awesome. And that's where my first book, Emergence, is all comes from. It's all about that process, that principle, the Law of Emergence. And it went on to help a lot of people discover their purpose, live their greatest life, and all manner of improvements in their life. But then along the way, what I started to notice was that something very specific was happening around abundance for people, including me. And as I looked at the framework of emergence, I saw that there was a specific aspect of it that was largely responsible for creating more abundance. And I went on to call that the abundance principle, and that's now the core work in my new book, The Abundance Project. And when I really focused in on that, I was able to not only constantly increase my own abundance, but also help others do the same. And not just monetarily, but in every area of their life. And that's what ultimately led me, like I said, to write the book and to the call with you today. And I'll just say real briefly, and then we can dive into more of the details. Really, the fundamental principle of the abundance principle is that just like the seed, everything is already in us. And so whatever's missing is what we're not giving, what we're not expressing, what we're not allowing to come out of us and circulate it. So most people are waiting for something to change, waiting for them to change, trying to change people and circumstances, believing they have to do all that before they can start to really express their potential. And what I found is it's exactly the opposite. If we begin to understand what's emerging in us and we start to find ways to get the circulation going, regardless of conditions, our whole life opens up. And we realize that we really do have everything we need within us. We just have to start to, like I said, let it out, circulate it, and really activate what I call the law of circulation, and we can talk more about that. But it was a revelation for me. It's changed my life and a lot of other people, and people kept saying, you got to write a book about it, and I ended up creating my most successful program around it called Awakened Wealth, and now that's in this book.
Beautiful stuff indeed. Beautiful stuff indeed. I've heard of Black Belt Wealth, which I really love, and then there's Awakened Wealth, which you just said there, which is really, really, really awesome right there. That is great. And not just the monetary wealth either, just all areas of life, which people tend to forget.
Yeah, absolutely. Abundance is the substance of all creation. And when you can generate that consistently, then every area of your life starts to get upgraded.
Yes, sir, indeed. And I even love what you mentioned earlier, how you were doing all this personal development for 10 years on end, and then wanted to realize that it was just developing this other self, but not the real you, which is amazing. And even the beginning of your book, Emergence, which is great. It's great that you're able to find a way to just finally emerge from that and actually get to where you currently are and to eventually where you're going to just keep going.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's when I went back and studied all the great religions and philosophies after this, and before that, I really didn't understand them. It seemed like a bunch of, Shakespearean writing, and I didn't believe in it. But after I had this breakthrough, I went back and read them, and I realized that is what they were essentially teaching. They were essentially saying, whether it's Jesus, Buddha, Lao Tzu, whatever, they were essentially saying everything is in you. And you need to stop struggling and controlling and manipulating your conditions. And instead, you have to start letting, as the poet Robert Browning called, the imprisoned splendor out of you. And so I haven't created anything new here. I've just discovered one of the most important fundamental principles for growth and success, and articulated in modern parlance, modern metaphors and analogies and practices so that, the average person can actually apply it in a very simple step-by-step way to turn their life around.
Yes, sir, indeed. Thanks for doing that translation for us. And just admitting that is really nothing new, because, I mean, it's kind of like how a lot of folks put the title Secrets in a book, and it's not really a secret. It's actually pretty well known. It's just that it's easy to do, but also easy not to do, as Jim Rohn likes to say.
Yeah, absolutely. It might be simple, but it's not always easy.
So speaking of things that are easy but not easy, how does someone create and live their dream life when they have no one around them that supports them?
Yeah, it's really important, and this all kind of ties back to the same thing, is that laying out a couple principles here as we are. The first thing is to understand that everything is in you that you need to fulfill your dream life, and that there is nobody coming to save you. There's nobody, there's no power or God or anything outside of you, but the life force that has everything it needs to create itself, to fulfill itself, is in you. And it's a reframing or a realignment with this principle to realize that we really are the answer we've been waiting for. And you want to know who's going to save you, look in the mirror. And that doesn't mean that you can't get help from people. Absolutely, that's why there's more than one of us here. But it's the ultimate empowerment to really realize that we're never a victim. And it takes some time sometimes to make this shift, but I want people to understand that you've heard these things kind of bandied about in the New Age, metaphysical, self-help world, but most people still don't get it. They're still struggling and striving to go make something happen. And what I want them to begin to understand is that they really just need to make it welcome. And I use the analogy of the radio. Now I'm going to keep using it until radio becomes the garbage pile of history, because we're certainly little by little bit going out of fashion. But, we understand that right where we are inundated with radio broadcasts. And that somewhere in these broadcasts, right where we are, our favorite music is playing. And if we could hear it, we would feel great, we'd be inspired. And even our favorite ideas are being talked about, other than this particular interview or call right now. But it's not manifest in our life until we tune the dial of our radio so that it matches the frequency of that channel, of that station. And when our frequency becomes the same frequency as the station where our music is playing, that station becomes manifest in our experience. Or as I like to say, you have a manifestation. And where was the music before you tuned into it? It was right here. It wasn't, you didn't have to, go catch it or go chase it or go make it happen. You just had to make it welcome, and you make it welcome by coming into alignment with it. And the same thing is true for abundance. And for every quality that we want more of in our life, it's already broadcasting. It's already expressing right where we are. And the only reason we're not experiencing it in a manifest way is because in some way we're not in alignment with it. And we're not tuned into it. And by the way, this is what Jesus was talking about when he said, they're like, when's heaven going to come? What's it going to look like? And he's like, oy vey, have you guys not been listening to me? He's like, it's not going to come. It's not going to be seen through observation. You're trying to use your eyes and your ears to see it, but behold, it's here now and it's within you. That's what he said. If we had just gotten that message, we would be in a very different place now. Buddha taught a very similar message. So it's simple, again, but it's difficult. But hopefully the good news is that everything you think is missing in your life right now, the love, the joy, the abundance of all of those qualities, you already have it. And so what I show people in this book is very practical ways to organize your life, to develop a practice in order to tune into that inheritance that you've already got so that it can begin to come out of you. And also, again, as I said before, a lot of people feel like they're victims of conditions, the economy, their spouse, their boss, whatever. And they're waiting for somebody to change, something to change, or even for them to change. And whatever you are waiting for, you're actually waiting with and weighing it down. And so I call this the ultimate weight loss program. Because you really need to lose all that weight, W-A-I-T. And because the universe isn't going, I'd love for you to have a great, abundant life, but sorry, kid, it's going to take a long time. Or like I use this analogy, if you are planting seeds in a garden and some get stuck in your pocket, and let's say a few years later you pull out that jacket or whatever, and there's those seeds. And you plant them in the ground, and you cultivate the soil so that it's congruent with that seed. In other words, it's in harmony with it. The law of emergence in the soil can't say to you, I'd love to grow you, seed, but, you missed your window, and you come from a long line of seeds that never amounted to much, And the principle is principle. It's not personal. So no matter how long you guys have been struggling, no matter how much you've lost seemingly, no matter what situation you're currently facing, when you discover this seed of potential in you, this seed of abundance, and you know how to come into alignment with it, how to cultivate the right conditions in your life for it, it must begin to emerge, it must begin to manifest.
That is so true indeed, because the world is so huge yet so small at the same time, ready to just give you what you desire if you're just willing to put the weight aside.
Yeah, and I would even add this, Dom. I would say it's not that the world's ready to give it to you, because there is no world out there, really. We're not really in the world is in us. And the world is willing to reflect back to us whatever we're willing to be in alignment with. And most of us are in alignment with a map of reality that says there's not enough to go around, I'm not good enough, it's going to take a long time, probably never. And that's what we're in alignment with, survival and coping and protective strategies. And so our world is reflecting back to us what we believe, what we are in alignment with. And the great news here is that, as I said, it doesn't matter what the world thinks about you. It doesn't matter what your parents think. It doesn't matter what your spouse thinks, your boss thinks. It doesn't matter what the world says you can or can't do. All that matters is that you come into alignment with this seed of greatness, this seed of genius, this seed of abundance already planted in the soil of your soul, and you develop a way of life that tunes you into it until it becomes a permanent preset on the dial. And then nothing in the world can stop you from manifesting your potential, because there is no power outside of us. There's only the power within us. And that, to me, is really the good news.
Great news indeed, the power from within.
Yeah.
Power from within. And I guess that kind of goes with the law of circulation in a way, because with the power from within, you just let it flow out, and as you create more life, I guess, in a way.
Yeah. So let me break down the law of circulation a little bit, because circulation is the key word here. Circulation is the golden key to abundance. And it's important to know that, for example, I want you guys to think of it in a couple ways. First of all, the word currency, which we think means money, actually comes from a root that means like current, to flow. The word affluent, which we think means wealthy, actually comes from a root word that means to flow. And so over and over we see that what it's really telling us is that there's a flow. And we have to have more flow, more circulation, more current brings about more currency. Well, a current needs to have a circuit to run. And for most of us, where we're stagnating, we have a broken circuit. We're not running the full circulation around the circuit. And that circuit is made up of 3 parts. And this is the law of circulation. You cannot give what you don't have. You cannot keep what you don't give. And you cannot sustain what you don't receive. So what that means is a lot of the heart-centered, spiritually inclined people are always giving of themselves and taking care of others and often not themselves. And so they're trying to give from something they don't have. And they get burned out, they get broken down, they get resentful. And so the first thing we have to do, let's just say you're in a situation where you don't feel like you're valued, appreciated, loved, respected, whatever. And you've been trying to either convince the other person that you're worthy of it, or constantly and prove yourself to be worthy of it, or just have given up altogether. And so the first piece of the principle is you cannot give what you don't have. So you have to give those qualities to yourself. So let's just say it's respect and appreciation. You want to ask a question like, if I totally respected and appreciated myself, how would I show up today? If I totally respected and appreciated myself, how would I walk into work today? How would I do my work today? What would I do in my life if I totally respected and appreciated myself? And you could also ask it, if I totally felt respected and appreciated. And if you ask that sincerely, you'll start to get guidance. You'll start to hear things like, well, you know what, I'd take better care of myself. I'd make time to go to the gym. I'd make time to make good, healthy meals. I would make time to have fun, for me. So that's the first step. And now as that starts to get going, now you actually have something to give because you start to feel the qualities activating in you. Now, instead of looking to get it from the other person, you start to go on the lookout for how can I respect and appreciate them more? Where is there actually an opportunity to circulate more of these qualities to that person or to that environment? And you start to do that, and you notice now your feeling inside starts to magnify because you're starting to circulate, you're starting to generate. And then finally, you are on the lookout for, not looking for where you're not being respected and appreciated, but you start to be on the lookout, kind of like the game Where's Waldo, looking for where actually respect and appreciation is coming to you, but you didn't see it, or you've been deflecting it. Like the person holds open a door for you, you don't even take a moment to go, wow. Or they give you a compliment and you go, oh, come on, you kind of deflect it. And now you start letting the love in. You start letting life in. Now you've got a complete circuit. And another way to think of it is breathing, right? Breathing is the one area we can't fake it. If we have a broken circuit there, we die, right? So if you're just breathing out all day, you'll die. If you're breathing in all day, you'll die. If you breathe in and breathe out, but you don't let the air come back in, you'll die. So it's a natural circuit that you can't fake. But in every other area of our life, we can seemingly fake it and cheat, but not see the result until we're suddenly stagnant. So this is how we start to get the circuits repaired in us, and we start to create more circulation. And wherever there's more circulation, there's more power, there's more energy, there's more growth. And when there's not, there's stagnation. Think of like a body of water. If the inlet and outlet, if it only has an inlet and no outlet, it will turn into a swamp. If it only has an outlet and no inlet, it would drain and be empty. If it has neither, again, it becomes a swamp. And the environment around it starts to degrade, animals stop coming, and the ecosystem breaks down. The minute you open up the inlet and outlet and you start circulating fresh water, there's a circuit. It turns back into an oasis, and the animals start drinking, and the whole ecosystem is renewed. That's what can happen and will happen in every area of your life when you know how to practice this.
There you go. So for those who want to increase their flow of life into others by increasing energy, is there another way they can do that besides breathing in and out properly?
Well, yeah, obviously in this case, that's an analogy, but as I was just saying, I was giving a very practical example of, let's say you're in a relationship where you don't feel appreciated or validated or whatever the quality is missing. This is how you start to get it, start circulating it. You start turning on the divine power plant within you by doing what I just suggested. And there's another aspect to this whole picture about how to bring yourself into integrity or harmony with your potential. And that is, you need to have a vision for your life that pulls you, okay? You have to have a vision because the pain will push you until the vision pulls you. And a lot of people are being pushed by pain. They're problem solving. They're stuck in a loop at the level of their limitation. And as Einstein said, you can't solve a problem at the level of thinking that created it. You just stay in a loop. So we must have a vision. As it says in Proverbs, where there is no vision, the people perish. we must have a vision. And unfortunately, most people have a bigger TV screen than they do a vision for their life. And they haven't recognized, right? They haven't recognized, because they're in survival mode all the time. And they haven't recognized it's the number one most important thing you can do. Because that's the seed of potential in you. And I help people to discover that. Once you have that vision, now you know what you need to cultivate in your life to be in alignment with it. And one exercise people can do is, you know what you want, or you know what your big goal is, and you start to visualize it. We've all heard of that. But you're not visualizing it to make it happen. You're visualizing it to become aware of 4 core areas, of 4 core habits. The habit of thinking, feeling, being, and doing. So, for example, let's say your goal is to have $1 million and be living your dream business life, whatever. And as you visualize that and feel into it, you notice that and kind of ask, how would I be thinking about things if I was living that life? And you'll start to notice certain habits that are very different than how you think now. Like, for example, when things go wrong and you were living that life, you might have a habit of looking for what's possible, looking for the lesson, the blessing, looking for how you can grow as a result of that challenge. Whereas now, when things go wrong, maybe your mental habit is to only look for what's wrong, what's missing, what you haven't done, and basically start running mental models of failure. So you can see the gap. The gap there is a gap you need to fill, right? You need to close that gap. Then you go to the habits of feeling. If you were living that ideal vision, maybe you notice you have a habit, an emotional habit, a relative sense of happiness or joy or peace or confidence. And if you look at your life now, you're wired to believe I'll feel happy, joyful, and confident when X condition changes. So you don't have that emotional habit. Again, it's another gap that needs to be closed. And in the habit of being, in your vision, maybe you're being more playful, being more outgoing, being more generous. And in your current life, you're not being playful because in your mind you don't have the time or the energy, or you're not being generous because you're waiting to have more and then you'll be generous. And then finally, the habit of doing. In your new life, you might notice that you are, for example, exercising regularly or creating your passion projects regularly, writing daily or whatever your thing is, spending more time with family, loved ones. And in your current life, you don't do those things that you know you want to because you have lots of good excuses. I don't have the time, the energy, the money, whatever. And so we've got all of this in us that's trying to come out, but we've got a story that we're telling, which is, I can't think that way, feel that way, be that way, or do those things until things change. And that's the bane of the human condition. And that's why the average human doesn't live 70 to 90 years. They live the same year 70 to 90 times. Because they're circling the runway, but they never get liftoff speed. Because they believe something outside of them is determining what they let out of them. But when we take those core habits that I just described, and you identify what they would be if you were living your dream, and then we create a practice for you now to begin living into those and building those habits, you become in integrity with that divine seed or pattern of potential. And regardless of conditions, it starts emerging, right? And this is also why Confucius said, all men are alike. It is their habits that separate them. And it's important to know that your conditions don't determine your destiny, your character does. And your character is made out of your habits.
Amen indeed. Amen.
Amen. Hallelujah. You can tell I'm a little bit passionate about this subject.
Oh, yes, and that probably came from years of study outside of just the magical decade of study. So in addition to your 2 wonderful books, Emergence and The Abundance Project, are there any other books you recommend others to read?
I personally was a huge fan of The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People by Stephen Covey. Just a great watershed book, I think. Really changed my life. And I also really love a particular spiritual mystic, turn-of-the-century mystic, has tons of books out there, His name is Joel Goldsmith. And he was one of the most consistent healers in the turn of the century, where he understood these principles and was able to heal people of pretty much everything pretty consistently. So that's a very deep transformational body of work if you want to go deeper with that. And then in terms of things that have also been inspiring to me or supportive of me, I mean, you mentioned Jim Rohn. He's awesome. Highly recommend his stuff. I have an eclectic taste. I love Tony Robbins, Jim Rohn, Eckhart Tolle, Deepak Chopra, who are some of my colleagues now. I would say check out those people for sure. And then in terms of other books that may or may not have a direct connection to this, I really loved Essentialism and Deep Work. And these are books that show you how to streamline your life so you have more energy for what matters most, and how to streamline your focus and discipline so you get the things done that matter most.
Deep Work is still one I have to get around to reading. Heard great stuff about that, as well as Essentialism. And, of course, the all-time greats such as Tony Robbins and Jim Rohn.
Yeah.
So with all of your amassed knowledge and experience, if you were 25 again in 2018, but you get to keep all of your experience, what advice would you give to yourself?
It's a good question. I've certainly thought of that. Well, the first thing, it's an interesting question because it's a conundrum, because in some very, very perfect ways, everything I struggled through is what made me who I am today. And the struggle is part of the journey of making us into beings with wisdom so that we can turn around and help other people. So there's in some respects, I wouldn't want to change a thing. But if I did have to give him advice, I would say, relax, relax, relax. I would say, trust, it's all going to work out. Just trust. And I would say, do what I'm doing now, which is more than struggling and striving to make things happen, develop a practice to come into alignment with what's already within you and already true about you, so that you can release all the resistance and allow your life to unfold with with more ease and grace. That would definitely be my number one bit of advice. But again, I do want to just say this, add hang a lantern on this idea of the struggles and challenges we grow through and go through are not an accident, and they're not happening to us, they're happening for us. Just like in nature, there are certain trees that need a forest fire to crack open their seed pods and open up the canopy and burn off the dead wood and create fertile ground for evolution of that species. There are certain plants that need rough, rocky soil. They have to struggle in order to activate the enzymes and develop the thick bark to thrive in their particular climate. And all of nature's tumultuous expression is divinely designed to activate potential and keep the evolution of the species unfolding. And the only difference between us and, let's say, the jack pine that needs a forest fire is we have self-consciousness. And so we can create stories about why this is happening, whereas the jack pine can't. If the jack pine had self-consciousness, and it knew that it heard, that many jack pines had been caught in forest fires, and it was like, ooh, I don't want to burn. It would probably create a vision board where there's these firemen on it, and there's never a fire in the forest, right? And here's the irony. If it succeeded at that, it would ultimately go extinct. So, or like the caterpillar that has to go into the chrysalis and literally die and liquefy, and then it reshapes and reforms at a higher, more complex level. If you felt, oh, you poor thing, and tried to let it out of the chrysalis, it would die. So everywhere in nature we see that there's an idea that's unfolding, and the way it does is it unfolds to a certain level, and that it tends to have a death of a deconstruction or a disintegration, and then it emerges to an even more complex level. And we are the same. And this is what chaos theory is actually getting at. That if you step back far enough from any chaos, there's a larger order that's emerging. They even call a new word now, chaotic. So if we could begin to understand that all of life is for us, this is one mental habit, by the way, I encourage everybody to develop, so that when stuff happens, we don't go, why me? Why have you forsaken me, God? Whose fault is it? Who do I blame? Or life's against me, I give up. But we recognize this is happening to activate the next level of my evolution, the next level of my growth and success and abundance. And then we ask different questions. What's the opportunity for growth here? Who do I need to become to be free in this? What's the lesson? What's the blessing? Etc. And if we're willing to do that, all of our pain and problems will be turned into our potential and purpose. We will discover that what's in the way is the way. And, or as Tony Robbins said, the quality of your life is very much connected to the quality of your questions. And so if you guys can begin to see your life that way, ask those kind of questions, you will pull out of you more of you. In fact, even just look at the word question. Question, the quest you're on. And
nice.
So you're pulling out of you more of you. And that's another big piece of the emergence framework and, of course, in the Abundance Project as well.
Beautiful indeed. The quest you are on. That is so true, because questions can open up the gateway to so many worlds. It's so true.
Well, there's a reason why Jesus said, ask and you shall receive. Knock and the door will be open. Seek and you will find. It's all the same thing. You have to knock on the door of life. You have to ask a question. These are ways you open yourself to let out more of that divine inheritance. Because there's inexhaustible genius, brilliance, the solution to everything within you. And we are walking around asleep, dreaming we're just peasants, begging on the side of the road when we are really kings and queens with the whole royal inheritance at our back. And it's time we take a stand for ourselves, take a stand for this truth, and begin to model that to our loved ones, our family, our kids, and perhaps in the world. And what I'm telling you guys, I know for certain. None of this is theory. None of this is personal. It's all principle. And if you align yourself with the principle, it must work. And I'll show you how to do that in the book, The Abundance Project.
That is right indeed.
Indeed. And if it's okay, could I let people know where they can go get the book plus a bunch of other bonuses?
Of course you can. Go on ahead.
So I put together a special package of live coaching and other programs to supplement and complement so that this book doesn't just become more shelf help where it makes your shelf look great, but it actually changes your life, okay? So if you just go to theabundanceprojectbook.com, that's www.abundance, ABUNDANCE, project, PROJECT, book, theabundanceprojectbook.com. You'll see there that if you buy it through the Amazon or Barnes & Noble link, and then you put your info in there, we're going to send you all of this additional support, and you're going to be part of the Abundance Project Mastermind and get the real support you need to create your own abundance project and make this year your most abundant year ever.
Sounds great to me, with all the gravy and the trimmings. That's right. So go on ahead, go to that link, join the mastermind group, buy some copies of the book, and help the abundance spread around. Help it to circulate.
Exactly.
Well, it's been an awesome pleasure to have you on the Going North podcast. Any final words or thoughts?
If there's one thing I just want to reiterate and invite you guys to take away, it would be that it's really true that everything is within you and that all of life is for you, is on your side. So if you do nothing else, just start with a simple practice of every day contemplating for a few minutes, if I really believe that all of life was for me and I had everything I needed, what would I do today? How would I show up today? What would I stop doing? What would I do differently? And journal about it, meditate on it, and contemplate it, and then start to create a list of the guidance that bubbles up. And then start to actually act on it. Just that simple meditation or contemplation. Because it is true that everything is for you, that everything's in you. But truth itself doesn't set you free. You must know it. You must embody it. It's true that electricity is everywhere. It was there during the time of Buddha. But it didn't help him until somebody came along and created a structure to harness it and to express it. So that form of contemplation and then action is what will bring you into greater congruence with that truth. It will tune you into station KRICH, K-Rich, and out of station KLACK, K-Lack. But you have to do the tuning. You don't have to make life happen, but you do have to tune into where it's already happening and make it welcome.
There you go. So get that compass in the right direction, or should I say get that knob on the right radio station.
That's right. That's right.
Oh, man, beautiful indeed. Well, there you have it, folks, the wonderful Derek Rydall. Go on ahead and pick up some abundance, some good help, not the shelf help.
Yes.
Shelf. Oh, man, that is golden.
I really appreciate it, man. I hope people got a lot of value out of this, and I just really invite you to go check out that book at theabundanceprojectbook.com. Get in the group and let me support you. Let me help you really make it a reality, and that's my commitment.
Thanks a bunch for your listening ears on the Going North podcast. I hope you really, really enjoyed that episode. If you enjoyed the episode, be sure to share it with your friends and family, especially those who love podcasts and love listening to some inspiration and motivation. And keep a lookout for the sequel to Going North, Tips and Techniques to Advance Yourself in October 2018. And if you'd like to connect with me directly, feel free to shoot me an email at dombrightmon@gmail.com.